Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Scary Stories video, and today we're going to be getting into some more subscriber submitted stories. You guys are amazing writers, and you guys have some amazing stories to share, so thank you so much for sending in your stories. I read through every single one. I get a lot of emails, so I try my best to choose which ones go in this video, and if you didn't make the cut, you'll probably make a future video. So please submit your stories, and if you want your story read in a future video, please submit to this email on screen. And yeah, I read all the stories. You guys are the best, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I've been enjoying recording them. And please like the video, it helps out a ton, and subscribe to the channel. The channel's goal is 500,000 subscribers, so please subscribe to the channel. And all right, without further ado, let's get into some disturbing, scary stories. The name's E. I'll be using E in place of my real name for security reasons. I used to date someone who was deeply mentally unwell. I was raised very isolated from the world, so I wasn't aware of the signs of disorders like borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. This isn't an attack on anyone suffering from those. I know how incredibly difficult they are to live with, and I only feel empathy for my ex. It clearly took a serious toll on her psyche, but I'll be honest, I'm not equipped to handle these kinds of disorders in a relationship. I'm not a professional, not even close. To start off, the relationship was tumultuous. She was incredibly manipulative, exceptionally delusional, and ended up cheating on me towards the end. While we were dating, she turned to witchcraft in an attempt to find some kind of spiritual alignment, something she felt was absent in her life and deeply wanted to nourish. But the moment she started dabbling in the dark and unknown, things started to get stranger. Not just for her, but for me too. Her delusions seemed to bleed into reality. She'd light candles, whisper incantations, bless her friends, and curse her enemies. It genuinely felt like I was inside the script of a horror film, and I was one of the unlucky participants. The first event happened when we were sleeping over at a then mutual friend's house after a party. We were lying on a blow-up mattress in the dark, trying to sleep. Suddenly, she sat upright, staring intently down the hallway, toward the rooms where our friend and their family were asleep. She said she heard someone walking towards us. I couldn't hear anything. I was frightened, confused. Then I saw it. Indentations forming on the mattress, like someone invisible was stepping across it directly over us. She leapt back and let out a scream that sounded absolutely inhuman. It was as if a demon from the underworld had clawed its way out through her mouth. Everyone in the house woke up in a frenzy. I was left shaking, completely petrified. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was the family's black cat. The room was dark, and only the retracted light from outside was offering any illumination. It made sense, or at least I needed it to make sense, otherwise I might have gone insane. The second event took place at my parents' house. We were relaxing on my bed, watching TV, when we both heard this deep, guttural growl coming from my brother's adjacent bedroom. It was otherworldly, like an evil goblin had just crawled out from under the bed. We called my brother, and together we investigated. I tore through the cupboards, convinced it had to be an old King Kong toy that occasionally made sounds when jostled, but when I checked, it had no batteries, and even pressing its chest did nothing. We laughed it off, trying to convince ourselves it might have been something outside. After all, we live in South Africa, where Americans have raccoons in their trash. We have monkeys, and monkeys can make terrifying noises if you're not used to them, but deep down, I knew that it couldn't be, as I've heard monkeys for years, and never have I heard a sound like this emanated from them. Between the second and third big event, there were a few other strange moments, like when we'd look up and see what I can only describe as UFOs, objects breaking through the atmosphere then vanishing. I initially thought it was a meteor shower, but the way they moved felt intentional, like they were being guided. I won't say it was aliens, but it was unidentifiable, and it inspired more awe than fear. It made me wonder where my life was heading. Before I met this girl, I'd never experienced anything like that. I was always skeptical of the supernatural, but suddenly my life became it. My ex also displayed some disturbing delusional behavior. She claimed to see faces where there were none. She'd stomp imaginary bugs and find nothing under her shoes. She said her house didn't feel real, like nothing around her was. I began to wonder if her mental illness was worsening. She did visit a doctor who increased her meds, hoping to control her psychosis, which she admitted she had forgotten to tell me about. The third event was by far the most disturbing. She had taken a weed cookie, and we went into the bottom garden of her aunt's house. It was night, and the garden felt like a forest, thick, dark, and unnerving. Suddenly, we heard bushes rustling, like someone was stomping around on heavy feet. Thinking it might be her aunt playing a prank, she had a history of doing that, I called her name. No reply. Called again. Still nothing. Then the footsteps got louder and stopped, as if someone was standing right in front of us. We couldn't see anything. Then my ex, still high, let out the kind of scream that makes your blood run cold. We bolted up the stairs and ran towards the house, only to be met by her aunt, who tried to jump out and scare us, clearly unaware that we were already terrified beyond belief. After things calmed down, I asked if she had been in the garden. She swore she hadn't. She'd only been waiting at the top of the stairs, heard the scream, and saw us running up. My ex was sobbing. When she calmed down, she told me she saw a creature, half man, half dog, standing on two legs, towering over me, like a household dog had suddenly grown human proportions and stood upright. I tried calming her down, saying it was probably the weed or a bad interaction with her meds, but she lashed out, accused me of gaslighting and emotional abuse. After that, things just kept unraveling. Eventually, she cheated on me with an old school teacher, someone who had clearly groomed her. It was a sickening end to a deeply chaotic relationship. We're no longer in contact, and I don't plan to reach out. I honestly hope she's no longer with that creep and that she's found some kind of peace. Living with a mind that constantly shows you things that aren't real must be exhausting and agonizing. But here's the strangest part. After we broke up, all the weirdness stopped. Like whatever was happening only happened around her, and maybe clung to me because I was close to her. Once she left, so did all the strangeness. I can't fully explain it. I've tried. Nothing makes much sense. Maybe there were supernatural forces, or maybe I was experiencing some sort of second-hand illusion. Either way, it's terrifying, and it really made me realize how powerful and horrifying the mind can be. Thank you for reading Snook. I'm a huge fan of the channel. Life's good now. I've got a loving girlfriend, and I'm living my dream as an artist. I still think about those events from time to time. It took a lot of healing to get where I am, but I wouldn't change a thing. It all taught me something. It pushed me toward a life that's sweeter than I could have imagined. If you do decide to share this, could you shout out my Instagram? It's at @legendarylankman. I post some of the art I do in my spare time outside of my illustration work. If not, no worries. Just skip that part if it doesn't fit the video. And thanks for the story. I might as well just shout it out and help you out. May blessings and comfort find you always. Regards, E. Hi Snook, I've been watching your channel for a while now, and I love listening to them while drawing and doing commissions. My name is Honey if you end up putting any of my stories in a video. Here's my first story. I wrote an essay about it for my English 2 class, so I'll send it like that for you. My mom and I were having an argument about me going out late. She lectured me on how I shouldn't and that it isn't safe. I just brushed off, heading to my room for the night. When I got to my room, sitting at my desk, wondering what I should do, I remembered this house a few roads down from mine, and how it was recently abandoned due to poor construction. I knew my mom would be mad and upset at me, but a part of me wanted that, though I was also curious and bored. After everyone in my house had fallen asleep, I grabbed a flashlight from the hallway closet and my extra water bottle. I quietly made my way to the back door, exiting my house. As soon as I got outside, I realized how different I had felt. I wasn't sure why I felt this way because going out late was not unusual to me at the time, but I just had a gut feeling I shouldn't be out there or going to this house. This feeling quickly went away as I was getting closer to the house. The sick feeling in my stomach changed to excitement, and I wanted to know the mystery of this house. Once I reached the house, the smell was so pungent, I'd almost thrown up. I assumed the pumping was a factor in its abandonment, wishing I had turned back then. Standing in front of this overgrown, grungy home, my heart was racing, and I had mixed feelings. A part of me wanted to turn back since I was worried about my mom, but I was eager to find out what was in the house. Walking inside, I saw the floor was stained green carpet. It felt like the rough part of a sponge, but damp. The walls were this orangish yellow with a thick coating of dust and cigarette smut. The smell had gotten worse when entering, smelling like rotten food or a decaying corpse. I turned on my flashlight after closing the door. The house looked like any other house after being moved out with, random bags scattered about, and a small couch with a round coffee table sat in front of it. To the left of the living room, there was a kitchen. Entering it, I soon realized the smell came from this fridge in the middle of the room. As curious as I was to see what may be in it, I assumed it may have been rotten food since there was this deep red substance dripping from it, leading to a small puddle, so I backed off. The walls remained the same as the room before. The cabinets and drawers had all been taken out and the floors looked like someone had been scraping and pulling them up. After looking around in the kitchen, I headed down the hallway. The paint was a different color. It was a deep purple with white trimming that was starting to fall apart. As I walked down the hallway, there was this one room that caught my attention. The walls seemed to be this light pink color, and the same smell I had smelled in the kitchen was the same as the one in the kitchen. Just as I was about to walk in, I heard a noise and looked behind me. I saw this tall man in all black. He asked, "What are you doing here? It isn't safe in a house like this." I jumped in fear, running out of the house before he could get another word in. Arriving home, I went straight to my room and tried to sleep without alerting my mom of what I had seen in the house. I slowly forgot about this until a man showed up at my house. It was the same man I saw that night. Telling my mother he had seen me in the house, and when he asked why I was in it, I ran off. She apologized on my behalf and thanked him for letting her know. I never found out what was in the house and never saw that man again. And onto some smaller stories. My parents say when I was younger, I would play with this ghost or something in a closet, and one night I was crying like crazy, and they couldn't find my passy, then it got thrown out of the closet. My dad would go into abandoned houses a lot when I was younger, and one time he brought home a Bible and some pictures of a young Indian woman. When I went to sleep that night on the couch, I woke up to this woman with really long black hair looking at me and puts her fingers to my mouth telling me to be quiet. When I was younger, I was at my cousin's birthday party, and a storm randomly started and a tornado was coming straight at the trailer. There was over 20 kids in this small closet and in the bathrooms. My dad was looking out the door and still tells me to this day that he saw with his eyes that the tornado picked itself up and went right over the house and kept going. I believe God didn't want all those children to die. I still live down from where it happened. Hope these stories are interesting to you. Hey Snook, I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to say I love the content and can't wait to see what you have coming. Keep up the good work. This is an unfortunately true story I experienced myself, and you'll be the first person I've ever told in this much detail. Now, let's get into it. So, a little backstory before I get into this. My name is Chloe. I'm fine with you using my name if you'd like. I'm 19 years old and from a small town in Texas. I've lived here my whole life. I don't and never have had many friends, but I'm a pretty social person and don't mind talking to new people. I would definitely consider myself a people pleaser, and sometimes I'm a little bit too nice to the wrong people. This story is a perfect example of that. I've only been in one serious relationship which lasted a few months. My ex-boyfriend was emotionally abusive and kind of ruined my perception of love. After me and my ex broke up about a year and a half ago, I pretty much just stopped trying to find a boyfriend and just did my own thing. After me and him broke up, I decided to try Hinge, which is a dating app. I wasn't necessarily seeking a relationship, but I was really just looking for someone to hang out with and have fun. Right off the bat, I had guys swiping right on me. I'm aware I'm a conventionally attractive girl, and I've always gotten attention from guys, so this didn't surprise me. I promise I'm not trying to sound self-absorbed by saying that. I've just been told I'm a pretty girl from a young age. Anyways, as I'm swiping on Hinge, I come across a guy I find very attractive. Let's call him H for privacy reasons. This guy looked like a real-life Clark Kent, aka Superman. This guy was the definition of hot. Blue eyes, black hair, athletic build, just an absolute 10 out of 10. He was also the same age as me and went to the college in a nearby city, so I figured I might as well shoot my shot. I swipe right on him, hoping to get a match. I wait a couple minutes and, sure enough, we matched. He sends the first text directly after matching, with some cheesy pickup line I can't remember off the top of my head. We have a short conversation on Hinge before he asks for my Snapchat. I promptly give it to him. He adds me on Snapchat and we begin talking over there. Over the next few days, we talk every day, sending a mix of texts and snaps, and eventually, he asks me out on a date. I obviously say yes, and we begin trying to plan something to do. This was around December of last year, so most of the things we could do were Christmas related. I decide we should go to see Christmas lights, as there is a nice light show near the town I live in. We pick a day and both agree to meet in town where the light show is at the Saturday. It gets up to Saturday, the day of our date. We had agreed on meeting at 8 p.m. since it needed to be dark out for the light show. I start getting ready at about 7 p.m., text H to let him know I'm on my way, and head out. I had told H to meet me at an apartment complex I knew of in that town, so we had a meeting spot before going to the show. The show was a drive-through experience, so we also agreed I would leave my car at the apartment complex and he would pick me up and drive us to the show. I get to the apartment complex and text H I'm there. He says he is 5 minutes out, so I listen to some music and chill in my car while I wait. Eventually, I get a text he is there, and he asks where I'm parked. I tell him, and he seems a bit lost at first, but eventually finds where I'm parked. He pulls up next to me and rolls his window down. I get out of my car and head over to his. He looks just like his pictures, but he looks much older than he said he was. More like late 20s, instead of the age he had told me, which was 19. I quickly move on from this thought as the first date nerves kicked in. As I'm walking up, I say in a joking tone, "Seems like you got a little lost there for a second." And he just stares at me with the blankest expression ever. He just stares. I thought it was a little weird, but I brushed it off. I hop in his truck and I immediately hit with the strong smell of what I think was bleach and some cheap smelling cologne. I also didn't think much of it at the time, but thinking back, it was definitely odd. Before I could even put my seatbelt on, this guy says, "Is that really the outfit you wanted to wear?" with a grossed out tone. I'm taken aback, but I say jokingly, "Yeah, you don't like it?" And he says with a straight face, "No." I was so shocked, but once again, I'm way too nice and laughed it off. For reference, I was wearing a tight-fitting black t-shirt and some blue jeans, nothing crazy. Anyways, we pull off and head to the light show, which is about 10 minutes away. The whole car ride was silent. No music, no small talk from him, just me trying desperately to not die of awkwardness and trying to spark a conversation. Maybe he was just nervous, but I'm already feeling off about this guy. We get to the light show place, which had a very long line to get in. As we were sitting in this line of cars, he eventually looks over at me and asks me a question. A very, very random question. He breaks the silence by saying, "Have you ever had sex?" I'm literally in complete shock. I look at this guy and I can tell he's not joking. I didn't necessarily think he was at first, but I thought maybe he might have been. I just couldn't tell. But no, this guy was dead serious. I try my best to laugh it off and say, "Haha, very funny. Let's not get into that quite yet." Just trying to get myself out of that conversation. Once again, being way too nice. He doesn't say anything, just turns back around. Another awkward 10 minutes later of pure silence. We get up to the gate to go into. Little did I know there was a $50 fee to get in. The lady at the gate asked for the money, and H looked at me without hesitation, stuck out his hand while saying, "I forgot my wallet." At this point, I'm pissed and done with this whole thing. I just want to get this over with and go home, so I hand this asshole my card. He gives it to the lady, and we move in. I ask him if he seriously forgot his wallet, and he nods his head yes. He didn't even offer to send me the money back, but at this point, I didn't care and just wanted to be done with the date. An agonizing 45 minutes in this light show with no music playing and this guy awkwardly staring out his window without saying a word to me. All the while, the strong stench of bleach and cheap cologne burns my nose. At this point, I wasn't even trying to make small talk, as it was so incredibly awkward and creepy. We get through the light show, and when we pull into the road, he asked, "So, what do you want to do now?" The most words I've heard from this man all night. I quickly make up some excuse on having to be at work early the next morning, and I asked him to take me back to my car. He gives me a pissed off side eye and nods his head slightly. An extremely tense 10-minute car ride with nothing but silence, and me thinking to myself how creepy this guy is. Eventually, we get to my car. As soon as he parks, I go to the door, and almost instantly, he locks the doors. I go into what the hell mode and look over at H. The look on this man's face was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. He was making a face I can only compare to Pennywise from the It movies. Still not talking or making a noise, just staring at me with that weird-ass face. I don't say anything. I've never felt that kind of fear and confusion. My heart was beating like crazy, and I got a feeling of pure dread. As quickly as possible, though, I reach over to the unlock button on the car door and open that goddamn door so fast. Luckily, I'm not the type to lock my car ever, so I swing open the door and jump in, promptly locking them as soon as I get into my whole body in the car, whip it into reverse, and get the hell out of there. At this point, I don't know what the hell just happened. I'm driving way faster than I should be on my way home, just to realize about 5 minutes into my drive home, he is following me. Mind you, I'm going well above the speed limit, and this guy is on my tail. I absolutely floor it, as traffic was light and I drive a sports car, which I'm pretty good at handling. His truck was older and fell behind. I continued checking my rearview mirror over the next 20 minutes or so, and realized I thankfully lost him. Now, I live in the middle of nowhere, so you don't just accidentally drive onto the back roads I have to take to get home. I pull onto one of the back roads I take and see headlights behind me in the distance. It was around 10:30 p.m. at this point, so there weren't many people on these roads. I start to feel that dreadful feeling again and slow down a bit. I look at my rearview mirror again just to see my absolute worst nightmare. He was behind me again. At this point, I'm not playing around anymore. I dial 911 and give them the rundown on what's going on and tell them I'm being followed. They ask what road I'm on and other information they would need. And about 5 minutes later, I see the red and blue lights come up behind him and I feel a sense of relief. He promptly pulls over and I continue on my way home. As soon as I get home, I run inside, lock the doors and back door, double checking over and over until I finally calm down. I called one of my friends to come over because I was afraid H would find me. My friends come over and I tell her what happened. She comforts me as I am pretty distressed. H never came that night, thank God. I don't know what would have happened to H, if he was arrested or let go. I do not know. All I do know is that the guy had some serious issues, and I can't even begin to imagine what he would have done to me if I didn't react so quickly and got the hell out of that truck. The smell of the bleach still trips me out. I genuinely don't know what he possibly needed bleach for in his truck. I try not to let my mind wander too much, but it's hard. Needless to say, I deleted Hinge after that, and I won't be re-downloading it anytime soon. Hey Snook, my name is Nate, and as I'm writing this, I'm about 28 years old. This experience happened when I was around 15 at the time, so some details may be foggy. This story might be long, but anyways, here's how it goes. I won't mention where I live for my family's safety, but I remember it being on a weekend. My parents planned on going to a beach hotel downtown. They left me a set of house rules to follow, such as keeping everything spotless, clean, washing the dishes, pretty much basic house chores. My parents didn't want any of my friends coming over since they had the suspicion that they were going to wreak havoc all around the place. I complied with them and ensured that nothing will happen when they're gone for the entire weekend. As they left the driveway, and me being an irresponsible teen at the time, I texted my friends in the group chat to stay the night at my place. My friend Pete responded with, "All right, on my way right now." And I was stoked to have one of the boys have fun during this long and possibly boring 3-day weekend. Pete took about 10 minutes to arrive, and when he finally came, we hanged out in the living room and played some COD. It was around 9 p.m. when Pete mentioned that he was starving and asked me if I had any food in the fridge. Before my parents left, they gave me around $200 for food, and I told Pete that we could order some pizza from Domino's. The order was 2 large sausage pizzas and some breadsticks. After placing the order, Pete went into the bathroom to piss, and as I was waiting for him to come back, I decided to look out the window for fun since I was bored out of my mind. Looking through the window, there was the usual streetlights in my neighbors' houses, but my eyes caught a glance at this woman down the street. She was wearing a nightgown that looked straight from the Ring movie. She was doing this tapping gesture on her leg. It was about 2 taps per minute. She was also holding onto something, but it was too dark to see what she was specifically holding. Creepy lady, I mumbled to myself. Pete came out of the bathroom and asked me what I was looking at through the window. I lifted the blinds and pointed at the direction where the woman was, but she was gone. "You seeing things, bro?" Pete asked. I assured him that there was an eerie-looking woman down the street. Pete simply shrugged it off and asked when the pizza was going to come. I looked at my phone to see where our order was at, and it was about 5 minutes out. "It'll be here in 5, I told Pete, who was sitting on the couch with the controller in hand. The pizza arrived and we set it on the dining table. I grabbed a liter of Mountain Dew from the fridge and got 2 cups from the cabinet. Pete Pete grabbed 4 slices while I grabbed 2. Fat ass, I said to Pete jokingly. I never ate breakfast and lunch. Cut me some slack, Pete responded. After finishing our food, there was about like 12 slices of pizza left, and we barely ate the breadsticks, so it was kind of a waste of money. We stuffed the pizza and breadsticks into the fridge for the next day. It was around 10 p.m., and we had nothing to do, so we decided to just prank call different people. Pete went first and called a random number. A guy answered and questioned who was on the other side of the phone. Pete deepened his voice and jokingly said some stupid stuff, and the guy understandably sounded confused and mad. Pete hung up the phone, and it was my turn to call a random person. I decided that I would call one of my neighbors since I haven't met them before. The phone rung until someone answered. I put a funny voice on and said, "Hello, this is your house insurance telling you that you'll be kicked out of your house the next business day." There was a loud breathing on the other day. The person then said, "I'm coming for you," and hung up. I was genuinely disturbed and shaken, and Pete shared the same emotions. "I think we should just end it there," Pete suggested to me, and I agreed with him. It was getting pretty late, so I went inside my room to get some pillows and blankets for me and Pete to sleep in the living room. I was way too afraid to sleep, and Pete understandably was too. Eventually, Pete darted off to sleep with me, following a few minutes after. I suddenly woke up. It was 1 a.m. and I look over at Pete, who was fast asleep. I felt thirsty, so I decided to grab water from the fridge. I heard 3 light taps on the window. I shrugged it off as it was just rain or leaves, but 3 more taps occurred, except they were much louder. I was creeped out and woke Pete up. Tired but concerned, he questioned about what's happening. "You hear the tapping?" I said, "What tapping?" Pete questioned. More taps came from the window, and Pete looked at me terrified. I decided that enough was enough and decided to peek at who was making those taps. What I saw next truly haunts me to this day. There was the woman I saw from down the street, and she was wielding a kitchen knife, smiling with a wide grin while tapping on the window. I fell to the ground horrified, and I looked at Pete, who was frightened from the terrifying view of the window. The woman approached the front door and tried opening it with no luck. She started banging, and I took the opportunity to grab Pete and take him to my room to hide. I immediately called 911 and told the operator to send help urgently. We heard a crash coming from the living room. The woman broke the window and was presumably inside the house. I suggested to Pete that we should hide in the bathroom. The woman was searching through the whole house, opening and shutting doors while screaming, which intensified the situation even more. She was getting closer and closer, though every second. I knew that in this moment that we were probably going to die from this deranged woman. I heard footsteps coming into my room, and Pete was just petrified in the corner. The woman started banging at the bathroom door, and it sounded like she was going to break it down. I heard sirens from the distance, and the woman stopped, and quick footsteps rushed out of the room. Police officers were shouting outside, and I couldn't interpret what they were saying. Gunshots were fired, and then a brief silence. A police officer entered the house and checked every room. He knocked on my bathroom door and assured me and Pete that it was safe to come out. Walking down the stairs, I saw the woman shot to death on the ground. The officer told me and Pete that this woman recently escaped from a mental institution and has killed a family, who I would discover to be the neighbors I was supposed to prank call. My parents came home and were in distraught and worried about my well-being, and Pete disregarding their rule of no friends in the house. They called Pete's parents and took him home. My parents canceled their little getaway and decided to stay home with me the whole weekend. In the end, this experience really gave me the scare of my life, and hope that no one ever has to go through this. Hey Snook, I love hearing stories in your voice. I have one such story. Feel free to share it. This story was passed down to me when I was in the 4th or 5th grade, told by my aunt and grandmother. It's a tale that has stayed with me ever since. We're from central India, and the events take place in the 1970s, during a school trip to the historical town of Mandu. Mandu is a small town known for its ancient forts, some of which date back to the 6th century. Surrounded by dense forests, the place back then was far less developed. At the time my aunt was in high school, the school had organized a trip to Mandu for the students, with one guardian per group. My grandmother accompanied my aunt on this journey. After a long ride, their bus finally reached one of the forts. The group was in high spirits, chatting, laughing, and soaking in the history. Mandu's forts are not only known for their grandeur, but also for their ancient water systems, underground tunnels, and massive step wells that were used to store water. In those days, these ponds and tunnels weren't barricaded by the government. Over the years, there were many people committing S-word in these tunnels and ponds. One of my aunt's friends sat near the edge of a large pond, dipping her feet slightly into the water. People were scattered around, doing their own thing, and suddenly, someone noticed her struggling. Her hands were flailing around in the water. A few people quickly rushed over and pulled her out. She was covered in moss and visibly shaken. When they asked her what had happened, her voice trembled. She said, "Hands. Hands grabbed me from under the water. I tried to fight back, but the force was too strong." The joy of the trip turned into quiet unease. After a few more site visits, they decided to wrap up early. On the way back, as the evening descended into night, their bus suddenly broke down in the middle of a forested road. One of the tires had punctured. The driver stepped out to fix it when, out of the blue, a man appeared, barefoot, holding a lantern. He looked straight at the driver and said to leave this place as quickly as you can. The spirits of the forest awaken at night. Spooked, the driver worked quickly and got the bus moving again. As they drove off, my aunt and her friends looked out the windows. In the distance, through the darkness of the trees, they saw a faint glowing light floating, following the bus. Hope you like this story. Thanks and regards. I want to start off by saying I absolutely love your videos and I listen to them when I draw or to fall asleep. I just kind of felt like putting this out there because it's kind of creepy and I'm bored. It's got a bit of background information and there are some fairly graphic descriptions of a recurring nightmare, so just a warning. I think before I go into the story, I should mention that I have a long history of sleep paralysis, going as far back to when I was a toddler. My parents have been divorced since I was 3, and I've never been bothered by it. At one point, my mom got a boyfriend, and a few years later, they got engaged. When I was around 13, my mom's boyfriend, we'll call him T for privacy because he's actually a fairly well-known digital artist, suddenly broke up with my mom. He had lived with us for 5 years, and I was super close with him. He taught me a lot about art and would let me watch him draw for hours. I never got to say goodbye. Over time, his stuff disappeared. The office with all his work stuff was now empty. His hundreds of figurines that once lined the bookshelves were gone, and it was like he was never there. After a while, I ended up spiraling, and my mental health got really bad. I started having these nightmares where a tall, dark figure would walk past my open bedroom door and stare at me through the small gap. Now, I was already scared of the dark, and at first, these dreams were only that, but they slowly got worse. It would walk into my room, stooping over because it was too tall to fit in the doorframe. Its back would press against the ceiling. It was like a tall, lanky black void, incredibly skinny and bony, with glowing white eyes and a twisted, toothy smile. It would stand there and watch me sleep, and then it would switch to where I was watching the dream at its POV. It would just walk out of my room and go into my older brother's room, which at the time he shared with my little brother, and they had a bunk bed. It would walk into their room and watch them before killing them. Slitting their stomachs and their organs would spill out. It would grab handfuls of their intestines and other shit and eat it. And then it would go into my mom's room and kill her the same way. It would then drag their bodies into my room and lay them down next to my bed and leave. And at that point, I would wake up screaming and crying and run into my mom's room. I ended up sleeping in my mom's room for a year until I was 14 and at the end of 8th grade. In this time window, I got into therapy, got a psychiatrist, and was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, ADHD, panic disorder, insomnia, and PTSD. I think there's more, but I'm not sure. I got on medication for it, and I started getting better. Going to therapy also helped with the nightmares. My mom got a canopy for my bed, and it made me feel safer. I still have it over my bed, and I'm now almost 17. I remember one time specifically when my fear of the dark got so bad that one time when my older brother was joking around with me and turned my light off in my room when I was in there and ran out and shut the door. I started screaming and crying. I broke out in hives and I couldn't breathe. My mom ran into my room and flicked the light on. And then I was in her arms sobbing as she yelled at my older brother, who hadn't realized how bad this fear was until just then. He never turned lights off randomly again. The nightmares started to go away, getting less frequent. I learned how to lucid dream to an extent which really helped because once I realized I was dreaming, I could start taking some control. Over time, I started getting more comfortable at night. I went from being 13 and having 4 nightlights on in my room and a weighted blanket to being 16 and sleeping in complete darkness and not giving a shit. I actually can't sleep at all now if there's any light in the room. I didn't have these nightmares for about a year, until the middle of my freshman year. I'm starting to think it happens when there's a lot of things going on because they come back sometimes when something bad happens. This one night, I woke up randomly, feeling like I was being watched. I couldn't move anything but my eyes. I knew what that meant and just ignored it, until I looked into the far corner of my room. That's when I saw a tall, black figure, hunched over with its back pressed against the ceiling. For context, I was at my dad's house that night, and I have a loft bed there. That's about a foot away from the ceiling. I felt panic rising within me. I stared at it, staring back at me. I almost shat myself, I swear to God. It felt like it stood there for hours just watching me. I couldn't fall back asleep. At some point, I must have, because my alarm went off at 6 a.m. I got out of bed and got ready for school. That night, I was on a call with my friends. At this point, I hadn't told anyone about this sleep paralysis episode. I got off the call at around midnight. My friends stayed on to talk and I went to sleep. One of them texted me the next day and said, "G drew something and made a story about it, but because of your fear of the dark, I'm not sure if we should show you." I shrugged it off and forgot about it until maybe a month later, when we were on another call, when they made a joke about a tall man. I was confused and asked them about it, and that's when they showed me G's drawing. She had drawn the same figure I had seen standing in my room that night, pressed against the ceiling. She told me that she called it the tall man. I froze and then told her everything about the dreams in the most recent sleep paralysis episode. She thought it was funny how similar the drawing and backstory she made for the tall man was to my story about it, but I just found it terrifying. They've come back sometimes after bad things happen. I lost my best friend, another friend died, I got kicked out of my dad's, and a lot of other shit has been going on lately. And every time something like this happens, the dreams come back. I'm doing a lot better now, and I haven't had one of those dreams in a few months, but I don't look at the far corner of my bedroom anymore when I'm trying to fall asleep. Thank you so much for taking the time to read this. Here are some rather shitty drawings I've done of the tall man. Another warning. One of them has a kind of gory part to it. Hey Snook, just wanted to share one of my true stories for a potential future video. This story takes place on 2 days summer of 2024 and Halloween of 2024. These occurrences have led to a weird theory going on between me and my friends that live in the area. Also, I hope you reach your goal of 500K soon. Okay, here's the story. A bit of backstory before this story is that about 10 years ago, there was a fire leaving many houses in our town in this certain area completely abandoned. Me and my friend live right by this place where they started rebuilding, but if you go far enough into the forest, there's many cool houses and stuff to explore. About a year ago, me and my friend were going on a summer walk when we saw an abandoned shed kind of thing. Being the dumb teens we were, we decided to open the window and slide on in. Getting in was difficult due to the giant amounts of ivy on the shed, but eventually we made our way in, and what we saw was horrifying. First of all, we saw pentagrams spray painted on the wall and burnt out candles scattered the old furniture stored inside the shed. We thought it might be some kind of joke, but then when we went into the next room, we noticed multiple bones and some severed deer limbs and heads. We immediately ran out and went back to his house. We were already on edge because it was about 1 a.m., so we were definitely freaked out. A few months later, we went back into the woods and explored a few more places, and many of the abandoned structures have signaled stuff going on inside. Me and my friend thought maybe there was a cult or something behind the woods, but what we found out on Halloween would prove our theory more than we ever thought. On Halloween, we were walking the trail that splits the newer neighborhood and the old abandoned forest area. We had caused a bit of trouble downtown and decided to run away and go explore due to the nature of the night, Halloween. We began to explore the forest and we crossed a bridge that went over a big concrete ditch that used to be a canal for the old houses. We decided to go into the canal and under the bridge because it seemed like a chill spot to take a break. A few minutes later, while we were blasting music and just chatting, we heard something like 50 feet away, and it sounded like talking coming from the forest direction. We paused the music and just sat there when we realized that there was a big bonfire in the distance. We started walking down the inside of the dried out canal and climbed down to take a peek. About 20 feet out into the opening in the forest, there was an old barn house, and right outside, a fire with about 20 people with matching brown robes on. And they were all eating some sort of meat, and we saw deer skulls behind them, which really disgusted us due to the fact that the meat they were eating was probably that of those poor deer. We also noticed many of them were holding what looked like shotguns, so we started going back to the trail when we heard 2 gunshots and absolutely ran as fast as we could all the way back to my place. We haven't told anyone about this besides a few other friends, so basically, a summary of the story is we kept exploring these abandoned places in a forest, and then on Halloween we found out the truth, that there was some secret cult making sacrifices with deers or something. So be safe, everyone. And Snook, thank you for the chance to share my story. Hope you reach your goal of 500K soon. Hello, I have a scary story that I'd like to share. It's pretty short, but I figured why not? I should send it in. I've always been super fascinated with all things creepy and paranormal, hence why I love watching this channel. But as I've grown older, my beliefs in things has significantly decreased, specifically in the paranormal. But every time I doubt the existence of the paranormal, this story from my childhood always plays over in my mind. This story happened when I was about 8. I grew up in an old farmhouse built in the early 1900s, so super old. It's in the middle of nowhere, so it's already creepy as is. I had quite a few creepy things happen to me growing up, like I used to hear footsteps in the attic above my room, knocking on doors, footsteps going up our stairs, etc. But I feel like a lot of that can be explained away in some way. Anyway, at this time I had an iPod 4. One day I opened my camera roll and saw a picture of me. A picture I had definitely not taken. It was a picture taken maybe about 5 feet directly above me as I slept. I still remember exactly how it looked. I was sleeping on my back with my arms sprawled out across the bed. In the corner of the picture was a ghostly orb that could have been like an arm maybe. This completely freaked me out, and for some reason, my 8-year-old instinct was to immediately delete the picture because I was mortified. And of course, at this time, recently deleted was not a thing, so I would never see this picture again. But after I deleted the picture, the next picture came up. For context on this one, we had a couch in the corner of our living room where there was a small couple-inch gap between the couch and wall that I would charge my iPod in before school. 2 of my cousins would come to my house to get on the bus for school with me, so I found a collection of pictures of me and both my cousins waiting for the bus taken from that extremely little gap that no one would be able to fit into. These pictures were also quickly deleted by an irrational 8-year-old that was too scared to look at them. When I tell this story, a lot of people think that it could have been someone else that took the photos. I grew up as an only child. The picture of me sleeping would not have been taken by my parents. That is not a joke that would pull on me. They also would have admitted to it. Additionally, at the time the pictures were taken of my cousins and me, my parents were working. There is no real explanation as to who took these photos. Nothing ever came from this. My parents still don't believe me. Small things would happen, like I said, the knocking, footsteps, etc., but I lived in that house for another decade after that, and nothing significant like this happened. Whoever took those photos must have been peaceful, at least, I guess. Hi Snook, Josh here. Always watching your videos, always got your channel on in the background. Appreciate you. Hey, thanks for that, I really appreciate it. I hope you continue to enjoy the videos. And now into your story. Feel free to edit and change any of this to make more sense if it doesn't. But anyway, onto the story. This story isn't exactly mine. It comes from my best friend's mom, who swears to this day that it's completely true. We live in the countryside in England, and a lot of our historical places are said to be haunted, and many of them have Halloween tales connected to them, and strange rituals that people tend to test and try out every year going back centuries. Stuff similar to Bloody Mary, but on a bigger scale. So in particular, close to us, we have a church that was said to be the site of quite a few confirmed witch trials back during the days when burning so-called witches was still a thing. We're talking a long time ago. The story goes that this particular church has the graves of a lot of women who were tried and killed for sorcery and witchcraft, and that you can see them from the upper floor windows. The building itself is huge and slits on top of the large hill. When the moon hits just right, it really is quite a spooky sight to behold. So, my friend's mom told us that back when she was a kid, every year people would go to the church and walk around in an anti clockwise direction 3 times before entering, and that once you've gone inside, paranormal happenings would start to occur. Her and her friends decided to try it themselves one Halloween. Her at the time boyfriend and a few of his friends joined her, and also a friend who was wheelchair bound. They proceeded to push him around the church and all laugh and joke as they circled the place, anti clockwise. 3 times. She said they entered the church afterwards and that it was eerily quiet, almost like nothing had happened at all, and that her boyfriend had actually gone outside to check and see if anything was happening out there or whether any groundskeepers had come to throw them out. The story goes that minutes after entering the spookily quiet church, the wheelchair-bound friend they'd brought with them had snapped and pulled the fire axe off the wall near the entrance door and had started cutting and slashing it at him while desperately trying to get to them. She said he looked like he was the devil in his eyes, and he was crazed. He wheeled himself toward them, wielding the axe, trying to get the rest of the group who were stood close by. So they ran for the door, trying to escape the church. And my best friend's mom said that she got out of the church just shy of being cut by the axe, and that her boyfriend rode up on his motorbike almost instantly and pulled her out of the way, and she hopped onto the back of the bike. They went to the police afterwards, and her friend, who was still in the church in his wheelchair, apparently just staring at the altar ahead of him, was swiftly arrested thereafter. But the strangest part of the whole thing is that even 30 years later, he was still in the same asylum he'd been placed in after the incident had taken place. He'd been deemed mentally unstable and to have suffered some kind of mental breakdown or psychosis, to the point that his life and mind had been forever altered by whatever had happened to him at the church. Before that, she said he was a really normal, outgoing, and friendly guy. He'd been hurt in a motorbiking accident, and that's what had led him to being placed in a wheelchair, but that it hadn't dampened his spirits. He'd always been bubbly and good to everyone, so the whole axe murderer act was truly out of character for him. Weirder still was that she had a photograph of the group outside the church gates before they entered, and sure enough, her friend was in the chair with them, as well as the motorbike that had saved her life. She said there are records of the guy and the asylum that he's in, but I never went looking myself. I didn't need proof. You could tell from the way that she spoke that, at least on her own level, she really believed those events took place and that they'd left a mark. From that day on, Anne swore weird things happened around her, and that even her boyfriend had been slammed into a wall in the kitchen at home weeks later. She said plenty of things started going wrong at home, and that she had to go to third-party sources to try and have whatever entities had come home with them expelled from their lives. Anyway, I don't know whether this is true, but I know Anne believed it was a true story, and to this day, she still does. I can also attest to the odd, weird thing happening at my friend's family home where she lives, but I don't know whether it's related or purely coincidental. Hopefully one day someone can shed more light on the church in particular, and hopefully her friend is feeling much better now. Thanks, Snook. All the best. Josh. And thank you, Josh, so much for that final story in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoyed recording it. You guys are good writers. I love hearing your firsthand accounts, and I just really enjoy your guys' stories. They're really, really fun to listen to. And this kind of wraps up today's video. If you'd like to see more stories like this, then comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel. All big indications that you'd like to see more. And thank you so much for watching to the end. If you made it to the end, you're awesome. Thank you so much for watching. This is Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.